Good artists copy, great artists steal, and we've always been shameless about stealing great ideas is something that Steve Jobs used to describe things being done at Apple, but they have really been known to take existing ideas and make them better. The iPhone X really shows us off, with Apple pulling things from all over the smart and dumb phone world. I'm Mitch, and this is where the features of the iPhone X come from. Now, the only thing that was a complete departure from what I expected was the addition of Face ID with the complete removal of Touch ID, which could majorly backfire in Apple's face if it doesn't work out as well as they say it will. Facial scanning has been around on phones for quite a while at this point, since the days of Android 4.0 with Ice Cream Sandwich. On those phones, it never worked very well, and was also incredibly easy to break into with a picture of the person. Last year, Samsung added iris scanning to their devices. While an improvement, it didn't really make any sense to use over a fingerprint. The iPhone X only has this one option for security, but they are throwing a significant amount of technology and putting the reputation on the line with this tech, so I hope it pans out well. In terms of the design of the phone, Apple finally released a design after 3 years of the design released back in 2014. Sure, it was all made, but it felt very dated next to many newer Android phones. This year, we see a glass and aluminum sandwich similar to the design of the iPhone 4 and 4S, along with adding an edge-to-edge display, minus the notch at the top. The first place I ever saw a screen covering the whole phone was back in 2014 with the Sharp Aquos Crystal, which was a budget phone off contract that never sold very well, but it did have a screen that went to 3 of the 4 edges. Today, we see it on many phones, from the Galaxy lineup to the Essential phone, all with their own take on where to put the sensors normally around the bezels of the phone. I personally think Apple's design is great looking, but not quite the best of the bunch, which I would have to give to the Xiaomi Mi Mix 2. It is also the first iPhone to use an Oled display, allowing for perfect black levels and a better looking image overall. OLED technology was actually first used on a phone released way back in 2004, before the iPhone was even released, on the Philips 650, which had a resolution of 80 by 48. OLED displays on phones are a lot more prevalent now, with Samsung kinda taking the lead. Redesigning also allowed for wireless charging, a first for iPhones, but something that has been around for almost a decade, being released by Palm back in 2009. Wireless charging was added to both the iPhone 8 and the iPhone X, and with the power of Apple behind it, it will finally become a more universal product, especially because of their decision to use the OpenQi standard instead of something proprietary. Soon, we will start to see wireless charging pads in more and more places like coffee shops and hotels. Apple borrowed other things as well from the Palm Pre, including the gestures, from the swipe right to access notifications to the app closing gesture. Everyone now is used to a small button on the bottom of the phone being used for everything, but I think the new gesture-based navigation will become something that people love. It makes the phone feel much more fluid and simple to use. Another thing that adds to the fluidity of the phone is the processor, and on the iPhone X we are given the A11 Bionic chip, and it absolutely destroys every single other smartphone chip in a phone today. With single and multi-core scores of 4200 and 10,000 respectively, they are outclassing Apple's own MacBook Pros, at least in benchmarks. The fact that we are seeing this kind of performance in a phone is great, and shows the true capability that Apple has in their silicon design. Apple is truly alone in this performance category, and this is one place that they didn't take anything from anyone. Apple is saying that this processor allowed for the first phone designed for AR, or augmented reality. But earlier this year, Asus released phones with Google's Project Tango AR program. While again, Apple was not the first here. With the pull they have in the consumer market, we could see a shift to AR becoming more important to everyone as the technology advances. Having so much power in a phone also allowed for some camera improvements, with an interesting one being portrait lighting. Similar to the portrait mode we saw last year and the depth of field, this allows for changing the lighting of a scene after the picture is taken. You have the option of lighting the person in certain ways, including stage light, which tries to replicate the lighting from a studio environment. From what I have heard and seen, this isn't anywhere near polished, but should get better with updates, just like portrait mode did on the iPhone 7 Plus. The iPhone X also has the same 2 focal length cameras on the back, 1 standard zoom and 1 telephoto lens, this time at a vertical orientation as opposed to landscape. Unlike last year though, both of these sensors are stabilized, which was first done a couple months ago in the Galaxy Note 8. But having stabilization for longer focal lengths is great, no matter who did it first. Good stabilization really takes footage to the next level in terms of quality, and it's just more enjoyable to look at. Up front, the selfie camera also received some improvements, most notably the portrait mode features of the rear cameras, due in part to the face mapping sensors being used for Face ID. These sensors allow for another iPhone X specific feature, animojis. Basically, animated emojis that use your facial movements to animate 12 different emojis. To me, this seems weird, and I'm not sure how often it will actually be used. It kinda seems like this is more of a demonstration of what the facial scanning tech can do, as opposed to being a useful feature. Animated emojis aside, the iPhone X seems like it's going to be a great phone. This is the phone that shows that Apple is finally putting themselves at the same level as their Android counterparts in terms of design, and I'm sure anyone who buys the phone will love it. as long as you can stomach the $1,000 plus price tag. Oh, and if Apple can do what they say they can, with Face ID being a suitable replacement for Touch ID. If not, it will certainly be interesting to see what goes down. I'm Mitch, that's all for this video, and thanks to you for watching.